Hello and welcome. This is class number 27 of the quick revision series for the Prelims 2024 that is going to be held on the 16th of June. This is also the last class of environment, meaning that from tomorrow onwards we'll be starting with science and tech. After science and tech, we have a lot more things to discuss as the places in news, and I'll try and see if I can manage to give one or two classes of CSAT tips as well. Anyways, today again we'll be discussing topics related to environment that have been in the news. Make sure that you do hit the subscribe button if you have not done so far. Also, if you missed on any of the earlier classes, I'm giving the link of the entire playlist in the description of this video. Also, you can join the Telegram channel if you want the PDF of these lectures. The link for that Telegram channel is also in the description of the video. Let's begin with the first topic for today's class. First topic, 281. Flood Management and Border Areas Program. Now, this is an old program that the government has been running for some years now. As the name suggests, it involves creating infrastructure for flood prevention and flood management simply near the border areas. The government of India has extended this program further by allocating 4,100 crore rupees. Here are a few details. The program has been running since 2021. It was launched during the 11th 5-year plan first in 2007. The idea is simple: to help the state governments in protecting human life, land, property from floods specifically. It is run by the Ministry of Jal Shakti and it's a central sponsored scheme. There are two sub-components of this scheme. First, the flood management program. It talks about how critical work such as flood control, anti-erosion, etc. will be done. 90% of it will be given by the central government, 10% by the states in case of northeastern and hilly states, and 60-40 pattern in other areas. That is what a centrally sponsored scheme is about. Then the second component is river management and border areas. Over here, there will be anti-erosion work done on the border areas where Indian government will be spending most of the money. 100% central assistance will be given in funding pattern for this second part of the project. Next topic in the news is an international treaty called the Energy Charter Treaty. Now, this is not very important for India because India was never a part of it, but it was in the news because UK very recently announced that they are quitting this treaty because this treaty encouraged the use of fossil fuel for energy production. It was established in 1990s, intended to encourage international energy investment in fossil fuel. And right now, at a time that we are right now, the countries are trying to discourage the use of fossil fuel. So UK has decided to come out of it. To remember, this was a treaty in force since 1998. It promotes energy security, competitive energy markets and sustainable development. India is not a signatory to it. This treaty had established the Energy Charter Conference, and it was again about countries discussing how to help each other in ensuring that they have enough energy resources, even though most of them came from fossil fuels. Next, there is a new kind of a cropping system that was in the news called the PSIR cropping system. These kind of questions are asked regularly in the prelims examination. An interesting cropping system, interesting plantation system that is in the news. Those kind of questions are asked, so you should know this. PSIR cropping system is a cropping system used to grow pulses along with rice in the fields. So this is usually seen in Odisha, UP and Madhya Pradesh, these kind of places. It involves cultivation of short-term pulse and oilseed crops in the rice fallow to maximize the land use efficiency and promote farmers' income. This system is also known as Utera. It is seen, as I said, in West Bengal, Chhattisgarh, Odisha, UP and Bihar. It involves sowing lentils, urad bean or urad dal or moong bean seeds in the standing crop of rice about 2 weeks before the harvest of the rice. So before you harvest rice, you can just sow the lentil, you can just sow the oil seeds so that the soil retains the moisture. It also decreases the efforts of the farmers. This does not allow agronomic intervention such as weeding, tillage, irrigation and fertilizer, etc. The rice variety decides the productivity of the pulses. So usually it is seen that the productivity of pulses improves in this particular area. The advantages mainly include much better soil moisture, which can be lost very quickly in other scenarios. This again to remember is a PIRA cropping system. It produces more lentil yield than after the tillage. So again, usually what happens, you harvest the rice, have an empty field and then start sowing the pulses. In this system, what you are doing, 2 weeks before the rice has to be harvested, you just use the land to start sowing pulse and oil seeds so that land can be utilized better. Next, another phenomena in the news was the volcanic vortex rings. The rings were seen over Mount Etna in Italy. Let me show you a photo. So this is the photo of the ring, almost perfect circular rings over the volcanic mountains. These are called volcanic vortex rings. Those who, which is not good, those who smoke, etc., you would see many of the people who are smokers, they try to basically bring out those kind of rings from their mouth. Very similar, but obviously much larger in size. These were found over Mount Etna. Do remember, these rings are generated when gas, which is mostly water vapor, is released rapidly through a vent in the crater. Crater is that opening of the volcano from which the magma also comes out. They can remain in the air for up to 10 minutes and then disintegrate. But if the conditions are windy, there's a lot of wind flowing, obviously they will flow away very quickly. It's a rare phenomena, but it is not unusual over Mount Etna specifically. These were first seen over Mount Etna in 1724, and since then recently also they have been seen over other mountain and volcanic ranges such as in Alaska, in Ecuador, Guatemala, Iceland, Italy, etc. They have been seen in these places as well. Here are a few details about Mount Etna. Do remember, it's an active volcano in Sicily's east coast. It's Europe's largest and most active volcano and also regarded as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It is usually considered as an active volcano with about 60 flank eruptions since the year 1600. Next news is about the Great Barrier Reef. It remains in the news for one reason or the other. This time it was in the news because it seems that the temperatures in the water due to global warming has been increasing, and this increase in temperature is significantly making or giving a harm to the Great Barrier Reef. A lot of them have died off in Australia, and that is a major cause of concern for environmentalists around the entire world. I'm sure all of you have read about the Great Barrier Reef. It is a complex area of coral reefs, shoals, inlets in the Pacific Ocean. It's mainly located around the northeastern coast of Australia. It is the world's largest and the longest reef complex, and it is also the largest living structure in the world. Do remember this fact. It's so huge, it is living, it's floating. It's considered as the largest living structure in the entire earth. It mostly is measured around 2300 kilometer, and at an offshore distance it can go from 16 to 160 kilometer as well. It is large enough to be visible from space also. It's made up of roughly 3000 individual reefs and over 900 islands collectively. Australia has been taking great care of it. In fact, a large number of tourists that come to Australia, for them this is a big attraction. They usually take helicopter rides to see it from up in the air. It is also a part of the UNESCO World Heritage Site since 1981. It is mainly protected and managed by the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park Authority of Australia. Here are a bit of details about the biodiversity seen in the Great Barrier Reef. It is home to around 1500 species of fish and 600 different coral species, home to around 4000 mollusk species and 250 shrimp species as well. There are many other sea turtles and sea snakes also found in the Great Barrier Reef. Next, there were some reports in the news. Now, for most of the reports, obviously you can't remember all of them. So what I have done is, the reports that are not that important, I have made a table for you just to remember the authority that publishes the report. So these were the reports that came out and were slightly important, and they were published by these organizations. So Dynamic Ground Resource Assessment Report by World Bank, Niti Aayog published a Green and Sustainable Growth Agenda, UNEP published the Global Cooling Watch Report, CMS, that is Convention on Conservation of Migratory Species, they published the report on conservation of migratory species. State of Finance for Nature report by UNEP, Sand and Dust Storm report by FAO, Global Landscape Climate Finance report by Climate Policy Initiative. So these are some of the important reports that came out. Rather than going into detail of it, details of these reports would be more relevant for the mains examination, where you might have to write some pointers from these reports or give some data from these reports. From the prelims examination point of view, it's just important to remember these reports were published by which authorities. Then there were some reports that are slightly more relevant, for which you should know some pointers for the prelims also. So I've covered those here. So these are the reports which I'm telling you who published and some of the pointers as well. Like the Global Methane Tracker report. There have been a lot of talks about methane gas, about how to cut down methane emission. Around the world, countries have tried to come together on this point. This is the report published by International Energy Agency. It says that methane emissions from fossil fuel use were at record high in 2023. US being the major emitter, leading in oil and gas emissions, followed by Russia. China was a top emitter of methane from its coal operations. Second such report was the State of Global report published by World Meteorological Organization WMO. It says that the global average near surface temperature surged to 1.45 degree at pre-industrial revolution levels. This is significant because if you remember, in the Paris climate deal, the countries decided that we will try to keep the Earth's temperature from increasing below 1.5 degrees Celsius if possible. So that goal is gone out of the window already. They said that we will try and keep it below 2 degree, but if possible even below 1.5 degree. So 1.5 degree mark has almost already been reached here as per this report published by the World Meteorological Organization. Then we have the Global E-Waste Monitor report. This is published by the UN Institute for Training and Research. It talks about how e-waste generation is increasing at a very fast pace. Just look around you. You might require only one earphone, but you would have 3 or 4 earphones. Think about what happens to your phone, what happens to your speaker when you don't use it for after 2 years, 3 years. In some cases, people change their phone in 1 year also. How are they decomposed? How are they taken care of? How are they recycled? That is a major challenge. With the increasing population, that e-waste is increasing. And with the world moving towards solar energy production in the coming years, when the life of these solar panels will come to an end after 10-12 years and solar panels end their life, that is when they will become even more dangerous and we will have a problem at our hand of recycling that entire e-waste. As per the global figures in 2022, the world produced 62 million tons of e-waste. By 2030, it is expected to reach 82 million tons. So there is no there is no solution in sight rather to how to decrease this generation of e-waste. Moving on to these cute animals called the camelids. Why were they in the news? Because the UN had declared 2024 as a year of the camelids. That is why these species are important. As the name suggests, and as the photo also tells you, these belong to the same family as camels. So UN declared 2024 as the International Year of Camelids. They basically belong to the same family where camel, llamas, alpacas, they usually belong to. Interesting part is they have even number of toes. So they're characterized by having soft pedal where each feet usually has 2 toes. So this particular species of animal, this family of animals have even number of toes, and camelid specifically has 2 toes on each feet. They have long necks, slender legs, but again not as long as the camels. They are herbivores and they have a very interesting digestive system which allows them to extract nutrients from fibrous plant minerals as well. Apart from that, they are ruminants. Ruminants basically are those animals that consume a lot of food, and then basically you would have seen they basically keep it stored within their body, and then after some time they keep on chewing on it so that they can keep on releasing energy from it for a long period of time. So their stomach has 3 different chambers, while other ruminants has 4 chambers. Ruminants are those animals that can store a lot of food in them, so that even after some time, if they don't get some food, they will be able to survive just by chewing on that food only. Another species in the news, white rhinoceros, critically endangered. Why were they in the news? Because in Berlin, that is in Germany, first successful embryo transfer of white rhinoceros was done. That has given the hope of saving this critically endangered white rhinoceros. This is in the category of critically endangered as per the IUCN. Indian rhinoceros is different from white rhinoceros. Indian rhinoceros are still in larger numbers. White rhinoceros are still in much lesser numbers. They possess only one horn and they are vulnerable in the IUCN category. This is the Indian rhinoceros that we are talking about. The white rhinoceros is different, and again, the reason why it is in the news is because a successful embryo transfer was done. So we might be able to increase their population. The last news from environment point of view is a new app called the Flood Watch app. As the name suggests, the Flood Watch app is introduced by the government to keep a track of floods and to send messages as quickly as possible to allow the people more time before they can save themselves. It is about sending alert messages and flood forecast. It will be sending these messages both in written and audio formats. Audio formats will be important especially for those who cannot read properly. This has been launched by Central Water Commission that works under Ministry of Jal Shakti. Do remember this information. They will provide real-time flood monitoring updates across the entire country. They will use real-time river flow data from various sources to understand what is the river level in different rivers across the entire country. There will be an interactive map allowing the users to check this forecast of 24 hours and flood advisory of the next 7 days as well. There will be a lot of technology used here, such as the climate data, satellite data analysis, mathematical modeling and real-time monitoring as well, to ensure that it provides flood forecasts in advance so that people don't have to lose their life and they can shift to a safer place in time. This brings us to the end of environment related news. From tomorrow onwards at 6 p.m. we'll be beginning with science and tech. I really hope that this has been helpful for you. Once again, if you want the PDF of these lectures, join the Telegram channel. Link is in the description of the video where I'll be uploading all these PDFs for your revision. Thank you so much. I'll see you tomorrow at 6 p.m. Bye-bye. Jai Hind.